Thank you very much indeed for that address, Alberto Mayol. Unfortunately, we will not be addressed by our next scheduled speaker, Mr. Ayman Noor from Egypt. A familiar face on the international scene. He's the leader of the Ghad party. He was a former presidential candidate, someone who's not a stranger to controversy. As you may know, he was jailed during the Mubarak and that caused quite an international stir. And what I understand is the state legislative authority a few days ago refused to issue him with a passport. So our apologies that he has been unable to make this venue, and we hope that those issues are sorted out. However, we are delighted to hear from our next speaker. He's the director and co-founder of the think tank Asuntos del Sur, a professor at the University of Arizona. He's also a researcher on political innovation, the author of Democracy at the Margins of Democracy and What Democracy for the 21st Century. Join me in welcoming now Mr. Matias Bianchi. Please address us. Yes, please, come to the podium.
Thank you very much for the Action Forum for the invitation. And I want to be standing. It's been a long flight. I need to stretch my legs. Well, what I want to present today, it's about a different shift of paradigm that we're living, and it's based on what is happening at the grassroots level, especially in Latin America. I was very pleased when Mr. Kanfar, he made references about scientific changes, because actually what I have in mind is Thomas Kuhn when he talks about scientific paradigms. And when we change, we make progress within a paradigm, and we make a revolution with a different sets of rules. And that's what I think is happening at the grassroots level, especially in Latin America, that I would like to mention a little bit here. I've just carried out a survey in the Americas, and I carry out also focus groups in different countries, and these are the results that I had. First of all, yes, there is a political crisis. There is a feeling that people are not fulfilled by the performance of their democracies, and the political parties are at the core of this crisis. We already know that. We always read it in El País, in the international edition, and this is common sense for all of us. However, something that we're not fully aware, and in this research it came up very bluntly, and this is something that the El País doesn't mention very much, is that what we experience is a shift of paradigm. We have a different demos emerging. When we ask about how is democracy, they're very unhappy. When we ask about political parties, they're very unhappy. But when we ask them about how they feel themselves compared 10, 15 years ago, people become very positive. Women have a different political role in Latin America. Indigenous people have a voice. There are more social rights. There are 70 million of new middle class. So this is very important. What we have is a crisis of growth. The wave of progressive governments that we had in the region, they have increased the threshold of political and social rights in the region. And so that's why I disagree with the mainstream publication that we see in Washington or even in Europe when we think about Latin America. So the crisis that we see is that there is a new political animal that is emerging. I already mentioned there's a new middle class, But there is also a new generation of democratic natives and digital natives. This is a very important thing for them. Democracy is not under discussion. It's common sense, is the way they live. And of course, the digital revolution that we are experiencing, that I'm not gonna go in detail. But what becomes evident is there is a new demos that has different shapes, different forms, different practices. It's not clear-cut, as Karl Marx have taught us. It's not, the old hasn't ended to die and the new hasn't finished to emerge, but there is something that is emerging, and it's clear. They're looking for micro-revolutions, not the macro-revolution. They are not trying to change the system. They're also trying to change themselves. They have a connection. What is happening in their community is not just an ideology. It's something that moves them. It's what they are trying to do. They are experimenting with their actions. They work in networks. They cooperate. They use a hacker ethics of cooperation, construction. While the political system, our modernity, and what the political parties mean at the core of this political system is about hierarchy, bureaucracy, discipline. So and the crisis that we've seen is that there is a loss in translation between a political system that works with different rules that this emerging society. And that's something that the pink tide, the progressive governments that we've seen, they changed policies, but they didn't change politics. And that's their crisis, and that's why people go to the street and we see all of these demonstrations. So this is that's something that becomes very evident, but there are also limits to this. This is not a happy world when we hold hands and we're changing the world. There are crises, and there's also limits on this way of doing politics. First, and it's very evident that the online world is more unequal than the offline world. So we have to be aware of this, that we're not replacing the old paradigm by a new one that is more elitist than the former one. The second is that these movements, they have difficulties to articulate and to establish leaderships. And they grow, they articulate, and then they fade away. There is a problem of political construction, and these leaderless movements are, in a way, not being able to replace political parties as the means for construction of power. And the third one is that most important decisions are still taken in the state. So these new movements, these new demos that we see are not penetrating politics. And that's where we need to think how to bridge this gap and to reconnect, to readapt, and basically to help the political system to innovate and reinvent itself for a society of the 21st century. So my last two thoughts are, first, that we need to think. I want to quote Mr. Kampfer again, because he said we need to think. We still don't fully understand what is emerging, and we need to think carefully what is happening, what is these demos, and what is the emerging political animal that we are facing. to better understand this transformation. But more importantly, and I'm thinking about Hannah Arendt when she said that political transformations are, in the end, due to the subjectivity of the political actors. So what we need to think and act is how we help these processes to go in the direction that we want to go. My friend Bernardo Gutierrez, that is going to be speaking tomorrow, he said these new peer-to-peer movements, Al-Qaeda is also a peer-to-peer movement, decentralized, cooperative, etc. So we have to be careful on the directions where we want to go. So if we want to go towards more participatory and inclusive democracies, so we need to think and cooperate in those directions, especially on how we solve the problem of how we construct power, either reinventing our political parties or how we open the political system to new emergent ones. So these are the ideas that I want to share, because I think the idea was to discuss these topics. Thank you very much.